To call this regular council meeting to order. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge that the land upon which we are located is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people. Before that, the Adirondack. Many Indigenous people continue to live in Fort Erie, add to the richness and diversity of our community life. Madam Clerk, the invocation. Or do we all rise for the invocation?
We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom, and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Thank you. And the roll call, Madam Clerk.
All members of council are present, Your Worship. However, Councillor Butler will be delayed by about 10 minutes.
Thank you. And we have additional correspondence by way of an addendum this evening. This is from the Buffalo Fort Erie Public Bridge Authority with respect to Easy Pass, encouraging people to get an Easy Pass, which will facilitate their movements across the Peace Bridge. That will be dealt with under correspondence under the consent agenda. In terms of announcements, a few announcements. This afternoon, I and Councillor McDermott attended and Regional Councillor Encina attended the retirement due for Anna Annunziata, who has faithfully served members of provincial parliament and members of parliament in this area for 27 years. She had lots of her older friends who were there, lots of her younger friends who were there, and she had a large cake. I didn't see either Councillor McDermott or Regional Councillor Encina eating the cake. I did. I also ate your share just to make sure they didn't have to take it home. But we congratulated Anna for a tremendous job. She's been a whirlwind force in our community for all those 27 years and really prior to that. I want to remind everyone that this Friday is Canada Day. We have a great deal to be thankful for in this country, and I hope that we'll all have an opportunity to participate in events and activities that take place that day, as well as remembering the wonderful country that we live in. We have issues that we frequently complain about. I like to say that there are people in this world, in various parts of the world, who would love to have the problems that we have here in Canada, because we have such great fortune. That doesn't mean that we're perfect, and it doesn't mean that we can't work to make a better country, but I hope that everyone will check the town website and the local news outlets for information regarding activities. This past week, June the 21st to 24th, was the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative held in St. Catharines, hosted by the City of St. Catharines and Mayor Walter Senzik. Mayors throughout the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence watershed were in attendance. The theme this year was powering the blue economy. There were a number of items that were focused on, such as infrastructure and innovation, waterfront revitalization, climate change challenges, advancing the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Trade Corridor, and innovative municipal financing for projects that would affect those living in that watershed. Earlier today, I attended a homelessness post-pandemic forum in Niagara Falls. It was essentially a call to arms to effectively resolve an issue that has significant impacts on our communities and will require multi-tiered, multidiscipline responses. So we'll be working primarily with the Niagara Region, all municipalities in Niagara, to try to deal with that issue, which, as I said, has many, many facets. Tomorrow, Brock University is hosting a climate change summit at Pond Inlet, and it will also be live streamed between 9 a.m. and noon. The new Niagara Transit Commission or Board continues to move forward with its regionalization of public transit. There are meetings and actions that are taking place to meld the existing service providers and to homogenize fares and technology. And also on the agenda is hiring a new head of the regional transit. Wednesday, June the 29th, UNESCO judges will be here in Niagara to view various sites to determine and evaluate whether Niagara qualifies as a unique global geopark. There's an organization that's been working on that for several years. We, as a council, passed a resolution supporting that initiative. They will be in Fort Erie in the afternoon. They'll be at the Ridgeway Battlefield Park. They'll be at Mwinja, and they'll be at Riverwalk. Aside from Jane Davies, Ron Williamson, the renowned archaeologist, and Dave LeBay, one of the members of our Indigenous community, will be in attendance and will be addressing the judges for that initiative. And then finally, July 8th to 10th, I think, Councillor Butler, I'm going to have to rely on you. Is it Friday to Sunday for Ridgeway Festival? Just Saturday and Sunday? On Saturday. July 9th. And I know that among other Lions members, I'll be flipping pancakes or carrying water or doing something. So please, everyone, take advantage of that opportunity, because the Ridgeway Festival is one of the great events of the summer here in Fort Erie. Okay, that's it for announcements and the addendum. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I have a conflict on 9.22C. That's the to receive the Fort Erie SPCA Board of Director minutes for April 28th and May 26th. That's on the consent agenda, as the company I work for has provided contracted services for the Fort Erie SPCA, and that's all I have this evening, Your Worship.
Okay. We'll take that out of the consent agenda. Councillor McDermott.
Yes, Your Worship. 71-2022 under consideration of bylaws, and 72-2022 I'll have a conflict with, because it deals with the lease agreement with VIA and charges subsequent to that. As I work on special projects there.
Bylaw 71, Councillor Lubberts, do you have one of the motions? Yep. We'll deal with those separately when we get to that portion of the agenda. Are there any other? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have conflict with item number 1473-2022 and 76-2022, as my business does business with one of the partners of Westwind Developments.
We'll deal with those separately. Pretty soon we'll be dealing with them all separately. Was there anyone else? Okay, then let me mark up my consent agenda. Okay, there are some upcoming public meetings. There's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision at 726 Garrison Road. That will be dealt with on Monday, July the 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers, also via Zoom. And the report for that hearing will be available on our website on Wednesday, July the 6th, 2022, around 5 p.m. There's also a public meeting with respect to the Douglastown Third Access Pre-Design Review, and that will be held on Monday, July the 18th, 2022, here in the council chambers at 6 p.m. And that will be further to the report that council received last week, or the week before, with respect to the third point of access and egress to and from Douglastown. That takes us to the regional councillor's report. Good evening, Councillor Encina.
Good evening, Mayor Redekop, councillors, staff, and ladies and gentlemen. I promised I will keep this short. I did earlier today, and Michelle did get one tart.
We'll see. We'll verify. We'll trust, but we'll verify.
The new official plan, the Niagara official plan, has taken up a lot of time, both at the region and with staff here at the town. The plan was brought before council last week, setting out how and where the region will expand until 2051. It is estimated that we will see an influx of 200,000 new residents in the region by that time. There was much debate about protecting the natural environment systems, watersheds, and the inclusions of buffer zones. The recommendations by Regional Council for the protection of our environment is going beyond the provincial government's requirements. Climate change also was brought into play in the plan. Policies were put in throughout the plan with an entire section focused on it. The urban boundary expansion was also front and center in drafting of the official plan. It was especially important to those of us here in Fort Erie. It's been over 50 years since the last plan was developed, and this plan will take us through the next 30 years. As Mayor Redekop mentioned, there was a session held this morning about homelessness and housing. The Consolidated Housing Master Plan update was provided to Regional Council last week. The plan was developed to address the overwhelming demand for community housing, along with the alarming rate of people on the centralized housing waiting list. The creation of the plan took into consideration the Niagara Official Plan, Niagara Housing Database, Housing and Homelessness Action Plan, incentive review, along with the new proposed DC bylaw and Built for Zero Canada. The demand for community housing is expected to increase by 20,700 people by 2045. There will be a need for 479 units per year in the region for the next 25 years to meet this demand. The region itself cannot meet this demand on its own. It is proposed that existing Niagara Regional housing sites be redeveloped. By doing this, it would add 1,835 units. Also, nonprofit and co-op service providers would be asked to expand, providing over 5,900 new units. New development sites identified by municipalities through the region would be adding another over 3,000 units. And of course, the potential units at Lynnhaven and the new Gilmore Lodge site developments. In order to achieve the direction of the master housing plan, a housing planner will be employed to spearhead this program, much like that of the, I liken it to the transportation, the master plan for transportation throughout the region. It was a person and a group of people who led the charge, and that's exactly the way it's supposed to work. Through the numbers, Fort Erie has the potential of adding, just through Niagara Regional sites, Niagara Regional housing sites, 167 units, 844 on nonprofit and co-op sites, 358 on other municipal sites that they've identified, and we'll be talking with the town later. So all total, over 1,300 new units for our area. Currently, the Crescent Park area is slated to have 18 new Niagara Regional housing units, once the funding has been received, and that's hoped to be by August. The plan is a 10-year plan, and it will leverage funding from all levels of government and a roadmap, and it's a roadmap to follow along the way. Niagara Regional Housing is active in developing projects throughout the region. There are 3 project managers. They are assisting nonprofit organizations go through the funding and building of the new affordable housing sites. There are several plans in our area that are currently being worked on, and hopefully we'll be able to start building in the new year. As an example, there's York Street in Welland, has 43 units, which is going to be completed in November this year. In St. David's, on St. David's Road in Thorold, another 11 units, they're 75% completed. And there are 12 other projects with 8 different providers at different stages. And like I say, there are several projects here in Fort Erie that Niagara Regional Housing has provided a project manager to guide them through the process of funding and building. And one last final note, congratulations to Niagara Region Water Treatment, as our water has been voted the best tasting in Ontario. So don't be afraid to drink the water from the tap. That is all, Mayor Redekop, if anyone has any questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Encina. Do any members of council have any questions of Mr. Encina? Councillor Encina. Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Encina. You had mentioned the housing that will be taking place in Crescent Park, providing funding is available come August. Is there any dates as far as when works might start if that funding does become available?
Through you, Mayor Redekop, they already have, the plans are already drawn up. They've already spent, I think it was $1.6 million already on plans. So they're really ready to go. And with this funding, once it comes through, I believe there is a timeline that says it has to be built within 1 year. I believe that's the way it works. So once they get the money and the approval, it's all hands on.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Tom, just go over, what's the total number that's required for the region?
It works out to 479 units per year for 25 years.
And so what's slated for Fort Erie? You gave a number for Fort Erie. Is that for over 25 years?
Yes, yes.
And how many was it?
It works out to over 1,300 new units. What they've proposed is using existing lands that are owned by the region, by Niagara Regional Housing, and the other places around the co-ops to expand on those properties rather than go out and buy new property.
And 1,300 units over a 25-year period, how does that compare with the rest of the region as far as other municipalities? Is that comparable for everybody? Or are we below average, above average?
No, I believe we are in the top 4.
Top 4?
Yeah. And I will say, it has been a real pleasure to really painstakingly drive nails into Niagara Regional Housing to really tick them off and get them going in our area.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Any other members of council? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Encina, for your presentation. I did want to mention, and you didn't touch on it because it probably wasn't part of your thing, but I will say, sitting on the Fort Erie not-for-profit housing, not only is Niagara Regional Housing looking at future, I will say they have helped us tremendously in regards to repairs on our existing buildings, which in the past 2 years have, I think we're over $2 million that we've had to put into those two buildings, which I think there's 55 units in each. But you know, we can't lose sight that the existing buildings, I think our buildings are about 35 years old, that they're needing some major retrofit. And so that also has to fit into the picture of not just new, but maintaining and repairing the existing. So I just wanted to add that. Don't you agree, Mr. Encina?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Any other members of council? Thank you very much, Councillor Encina. That takes us then to the presentations and delegations, and the first delegation this evening is John Borosny with respect to an EC overlay. Good evening, Mr. Borosny.
Good evening. My name is John Borosny. I live at 880 Edgemere Road in Fort Erie. I bought my property the fall of 2012. 2014, the summer, I applied for a permit to put a garage addition onto my house. They said I had to have an EC overlay removed from the property. So I had it removed and I built my shop. In the summer of 2015, I decided to build an additional shop farther back on my property. So I went for my permit and they said, you had to have the EC overlay removed. And I said, I did. And they go, you got to go to the planning department. So I went to planning department, and they said, we did a housekeeping. Whoops. We did a housekeeping. We put it back on. I don't understand, like, do they not have to go through some kind of a study to put this back on? Anyway, so I got that, and I got it removed again, and I built my shop. And while I was building just before I started building my shop, they had all these people come there from the EC committee. And the one guy came back and, I wasn't going to tell who. Anyways, the one guy came back and said, well, you got it all removed, eh? And I goes, yes. And he goes, is that a nesting Baltimore Oriole in that oak tree? And I goes, no. I goes, that's a robin, and it's an ash tree, and it's trying to build a nest. And he goes, nope, it's a nesting Baltimore Oriole, and we're going to deny your permit. We're going to hold back your permit for 3 weeks to get it done. So in the meantime, I had put a deposit down on the shop to get the foundation poured. I had to call the guy and delay it. He couldn't delay it. I lost half of my deposit. I lost $1,500 on that. And then when I had to get somebody else to put a foundation, it cost me an additional $1,000 over what the first guy did. But anyway, so I got that all done and finished. And recently, I'm looking on the internet, and the EC is back on there. The overlay is back on there. So I apply to get it taken off again. They all come back out, and they're walking around looking. And the one guy goes, why are we here? He goes, we've been here 3 times now. This was all removed. I don't understand why we're here. One of the other people agreed. The other person agreed. And I think it was the chairperson said, no, we must have allowed just a partial or something was different. No real explanation was given to me. Again, I don't understand how I could get this EC overlay taken off and they can just throw it back on. At one point, I even had the Conservation Authority come out, walk my property with me, and they had a piece of paper, and they were looking for trees of, I think it was maple tree, oak tree. There was a few other trees that had to be on the property that I couldn't chop down. I goes, I have no problem. I just wanted this overlay removed. And she goes, there's nothing here of any concern to us. So I had them send an email to City Hall so I could get my permit for the shop I was doing in 2015. When I went to get my permit, I explained to them that I'm here to get my permit, and they said, it's been sitting here for 3 weeks. And I goes, 3 weeks? And I goes, what about the guy from the EC? And they had no idea that this guy was coming to my house and checking and that he's delayed my permit. And also, your EC committee, I feel, none of them are really qualified for what they do, and they tend to have a not in my backyard attitude. The one woman walked up and they kept on asking me, why do you want it removed? Why do you want it removed? It shouldn't have been on in the first place. I've had it removed twice. And as she's leaving, I did mention that, development would be great back there. And as she's leaving, she says she likes walking down the Friendship Trail, looking back through the backyards and seeing the trees and stuff like that, and development would kind of ruin that. So I don't think anybody on that committee that lives close to what is going to be going on should be allowed to vote or be on that committee for that kind of thing. Again, I've had it removed twice. I don't understand how it gets being put back on. And if it is, do they not have to do some kind of survey or a study or have somebody come out and walk? Like, I have no tree features. I have no water features. It's just vacant. It's my backyard. I don't understand why. And they told me they like to have a link between the property over here and the property over there. The property to the west, they got trees. The property to the east, it's about 20 meters of trees. And then the next 3 properties, they're basically void of trees. There's really nothing to be joined to. I just don't understand. Anyways, that's what I'm asking, to get my EC overlay removed again, because I've already had it removed twice.
Thank you, Mr. Verosny. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Verosny, thank you very much for your presentation, and I can appreciate the frustration with what you've been through. I'm just curious, Have you, and I understand you've consulted with the MPCA, I think you mentioned, as well as our own Environmental Advisory Committee here in Fort Erie. Have you retained a consultant or an environmental expert or anyone regarding the EC overlay and the linkages to get almost a second opinion on this?
I actually, my children live out west, and when I was out there, I was contacted by I guess, environmentalist. He was representing the people, maybe about 4 houses down from me. They've got a big piece of property back there. And when I came back, he met with me, and he walked around my whole property, and he says there's no way this could be considered any kind of a woodland, a wetland, anything like that. There's nothing, there's no big trees, there's nothing back here. Like I said, it's my backyard. And if you look at the existing overlay, where my shop is, where I had that overlay removed, the overlay covers it. Where my house is, the overlay covers it. The house next door that was built in 2012, the overlay completely covers it. And the house next door to that, which was built in 2013, it completely covers that. And I think it's 920 Edgemere. The overlay completely covers the house. That overlay is incorrect. It's very obsolete. And I feel if I get it removed once, and then I get it removed twice, I shouldn't have to keep on getting this thing removed. It just doesn't make sense to me.
If I may, Your Worship, yes, and thank you. I appreciate where you're coming from, and I know what you're saying there. Do you have any of this in writing? Do you have a report? Do you have emails? Do you have anything from any of these professionals?
All that was sent to the city, and all I have is a thing from Ian Barrett saying that he was going to meet me in the back of my property. So,
Okay.
like, I really have nothing, but the fact is, I did have it removed twice.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm trying to, well, I think you know where I'm going with that, but
Yeah.
thank you for your presentation, and I do appreciate you standing up and speaking about this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the delegate, Mr. Bronzy. Mr. Bronzy, just want a clarification. Did you say that you had applied for your building permit for your addition, and it was sitting there for 3 weeks, and you didn't know it was sitting there?
Yes.
And at that point, within those 3 weeks, if you wanted to, if you knew, you could have started building then, but you didn't know that it had been approved.
Well, this individual has said he was going to hold my permit up. He said the EC committee was going to hold that permit up until that Baltimore Oriole, which wasn't, left. And he actually came back at the end of 1 week, came back at the end of 2 weeks, and partway into the third week, I went to the Conservation Authority, and I explained to him, I goes, these people are holding my thing up because of a bird. And it goes, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. I goes, it's not an oak tree, it's an ash tree, it's half dead. And this is the kind of people you got on the environmental committee. He doesn't even know what the difference between an oak and an ash and a robin and a Baltimore Oriole.
Okay, I'm not going to comment on that, but
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
still trying to get some clarification here. So I thought you also said that when you went back to the planning department 3 weeks later, they said, well, it's been sitting here, and they didn't know that the EAC had requested. to hold
Yeah, had no
on.
idea. Had no idea that he had come to me and said it was the building department.
Okay, so in that case, would I be correct in that if you would have gone to the building department 3 weeks earlier, picked up the permit, you could have started?
Yeah, well, the thing is, the building department is supposed to inform you that your permit is ready.
Okay, let's say they did, which they didn't, but you could have started building it 3
Yes,
weeks
I could
earlier.
have.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other members of council? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop, and thank you very much for your presentation. Just for some clarification and just for some insight on yourself, we have a bird biologist that sits on Environmental Advisory Committee. She has a master's degree in bird biology. I think she's very well qualified in her role.
This wasn't a woman.
So
Yes,
Councillor Lubberts.
yes, I get that, yeah.
Councillor
Now,
Lubberts, I'm going to ask you to confine yourself to questions.
yeah, I just wanted to verify that, he made some comments, Mayor Redekop, about
He does. and that
members
could be-
of the EAC are not qualified to be members of EAC, and they are. qualified.
Councillor Lubberts, but the
Yes.
proper time for you to address that would be
Yes,
when we
thank
get
you.
to that item on
So-
our agenda.
Just a question, let's go to your EC overlay. You said that a permit was ready at the town. Now, if the permit was ready, then the EC overlay must have been removed.
Yes.
But you're saying that the Environmental Advisory Committee
No, I'm
has
saying that,
said that they
I'm saying this one individual came back and said that because of that nesting bird up there, he was putting a stop work order against, have the building department put a stop work order against that, against my permit.
So I think the problem, Mr. Brosny, is that seems to be inconsistent with your advice that the building permit was here for 3 weeks, you could have picked it up.
Well, that's what they had told me. That's, like, when I went to get my permit, they had said to me, because I waited that 3-week time period, and I had the Conservation Authority sent them an email saying there was nothing there that was an issue. And when I went to get my permit at the 3rd week, they said it had been sitting here all along for 3 weeks. And that guy actually, and I goes, what about the guy that came to my house? And they said, what guy? They had no idea. And I said, he was from the EC committee. And they said, he doesn't even work for the city. He's just on one of the committees. He's a public people type thing.
Councillor Lubberts, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. NPCA sent an email into the town, you said.
Yes.
Did they CC you on that email?
No.
Do you remember when they sent that?
Well, it would have been July 2015, somewhere around there, June, July, August.
And they sent that to the town of Fort Erie?
Yes. They would have sent that
Did they
direct.
tell you who at the town of Fort Erie? Was it the planning department or the building department or?
No, I'm guessing it would have been the building department, because they're the ones that issue the permits.
Planning and building?
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of the person from NPCA that you were talking to?
No, but if I remember right, it was a female, and if I'm not mistaken, she was either retiring very soon, or she wasn't going to be there for a while. I don't know if that helps identify the person, but.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Brosny, just so I'm clear, you've talked about something before 2015, you've spoken about 2015. Presumably there's something that you want to do now, and this issue again arose?
I shouldn't have to want to do anything. The issue is, it was supposed to be removed once, it was supposed to be removed twice. Why does it keep on getting?
Bear with me. How would the Environmental Advisory Committee get involved unless there was a request for something? So is there something that you're planning on doing now?
No, I just don't want it there because I've had it removed twice.
So you've been made aware of the fact that there is an environmental conservation overlay, and after obtaining that information, you requested that it be removed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Because the first 2 times I had it for the building issues and.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Brosny, Councillor Lubberts?
Yes. I need some clarification.
Okay.
You were asking for a building permit. You just told the mayor that you're not planning on doing anything now, this last term go around. So you got a building permit, you must have built something.
In 2014 and 2015.
Okay, so you got the building permit then. Now, you're not doing anything to the property.
No.
You just want the EC overlay removed because you feel that,
I've gone through it twice to have it removed. It should be still removed.
okay.
They shouldn't be able to do this housekeeping thing, saying, it's housekeeping, we're just putting it back on again. That's the response I got.
And that was from town staff?
Planning department, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right.
You're okay now.
Thank you.
That takes us to our next delegation, Peter Hatcher, 920 Edgemere Road. Good evening, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. Do you have copies of the images that I
I
provided?
don't believe we do.
Oh, okay. So I was under the impression that you would have,
I'm sorry, were they circulated by email?
it's a PDF document.
What time was that? Was that today? I'm sorry, Mr. Hatcher, were you under the understanding that it would be on our,
Yes, I assumed everybody would have a copy. That was all. It's not a big deal.
no, that's fine. Let me just, June 24th, 11 a.m. Yes, I did read this, actually.
Okay.
That was a few days ago. So
Okay.
we're all set. Everybody has it now.
Okay, great. So, did you want me to go through it since you've got it in front of you? I don't want to, repeat something that
Why
you've
don't you
already
do the-
read.
why
I
don't you
just
do the
go.
highlights?
Okay,
and-
sure,
yeah.
sure. I'm here to ask the town to install a barrier beside the Friendship Trail adjacent to my property, because to prevent illegal snowmobile users from cutting across my property. Now, I'm sure you're aware that we've had problems with illegal snowmobile use over the Friendship Trail, especially people living close to the Friendship Trail. They drive down there all hours of the day and night after snowfalls and things. But anyway, I won't get into that. My property, I believe, is uniquely positioned because it's right adjacent to the trail, and there's no barrier between my property and the trail. And so what's happened this year is that some snowmobilers have taken it upon themselves to cut the corner. So at the end of my property, the Friendship Trail takes a left to go down Edgemere Road, and they're cutting across my property and damaging not only the flower beds that are underneath, but also gouging out my driveway. So the issue I've got is that on the other side of the Friendship Trail, my neighbour has a town-installed barrier, and all I'm asking is that the town install a similar barrier on my side to prevent continuous damage to my property.
Pretty clear. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just to verify, you're on the east side of the
Yes.
Friendship Trail. So basically, you could do a 45-degree angle across your driveway
Yes.
to go back to the Friendship Trail as it continues along Edgemere.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's what the image number 3 shows.
Right, and I'm looking here because I've actually got Google Maps up right now. It looks, the barrier, or the kind of almost a little half-height fence, is located on the west side, which
Yes.
is not the direction
Yes,
that the
that's
Friendship
right.
Trail continues
That's
on.
right. That's right.
Thank you very much for
Yeah.
your presentation this
Yeah,
evening.
okay.
Thank
Any
you.
Any other members of council? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you. Mr. Hatcher, I don't know if you understand, you probably do, that we don't allow snowmobiles on the Friendship Trail.
I understand that, and so I also understand that the police are responsible for enforcing the issue. But what I found is when I report it to the police, they're not interested. Like even when it happens, the snowmobile's gone. So if I rush out, they're gone. I don't know who they are. And as I say, I reported the damage to my driveway, and the police didn't even send somebody out. So I've got no recourse. And so all I can do is sit there and watch people go tearing down the Friendship Trail across my property, damaging my driveway, and there's nothing I can do. All I've got to do is continue to pay to repair it. It doesn't seem reasonable.
Mr. Hatcher, thank you, and I can appreciate your frustration, and we have contacted Niagara Regional Police on a number of occasions, but it's such a...
Well, to be
difficult
fair,
solve.
to the police, like even if I get to the phone, they're gone. And how can I prove that it was that snowmobile and so on? It's unenforceable. The arrangement, unless they're driving down there and catch them, going across. But as I say, it's a crazy situation.
In regards to the barrier you're requesting, would you be happy if it was the same?
Yeah, that's all we want. It's exactly the same as that's on the other side. That just to stop people cutting across. That's all I'm looking for. And I'm not. say, ideally, I'd like to have nobody on there at all, but that's not practical. But just to have that barrier, because I've had to pay to have my driveway repaired this year. And with talking to the town, they talked about putting up markers, but that's not going to stop them. And again, so what will happen if there's a heavy snowfall? They'll cut across, and I'll have to have it repaired again. It's just not reasonable, I don't think.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hatcher. We appreciate that. This will come up later under new business, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. The only other request I would make is if you do decide, could it be done before the snowfall, please?
What would happen is this would be directed to staff, and then staff would have
Yeah.
consultation.
Yeah. Okay. Just.
You're not having ATVs, which is good news, I suppose.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. That then takes us to the consent agenda. Councillor McDermott, you have the resolution for the consent agenda, but I would ask you to do everything except item 9.2.2C, which Councillor Dubanow has a pecuniary interest. And I'd also like you to remove 9.2.2F, which relates to the city of Cambridge. Are there any other items that anyone wishes removed? Councillor Zanko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would like item number 3E removed, the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting notes.
So that's 9.2.3E.
Yes.
Just the three?
Yep, I guess, yep.
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko. The council approves the consent agenda items as recommended, save and except 9.22C, 9.22F, and 9.22E.
9.2.3E. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment with regard to the correspondence that we received from the Buffalo and Fort Erie Public Bridge Authority regarding Easy Pass. I want to highlight this because I've had an Easy Pass for the Peace Bridge. I just had to replace my Easy Pass, so it's been over 10 years now. It's great because you can use the dedicated lanes at the Peace Bridge. The barrier just lifts. You don't have to have any contact. You don't have to carry change in your car. You can do it on the Grand Island bridges and the throughways. Everything there is cashless now. The reason I want to highlight this is because I was speaking with some individuals last week who didn't even know that Canadians could get Easy Pass. They thought it was just an American thing. You had to have a U.S. address. That's not true at all. They facilitate Canadians, and the New York Service Center is very well equipped to service Canadians. And with all of the toll roads and all the toll bridges in the northeastern United States, it's not just the Peace Bridge, it's also the Niagara Falls bridges use Easy Pass, the Thousand Island Bridge uses Easy Pass. Anyone who travels between Canada and the United States in southern Ontario should really consider this. There's quite a cost savings even after you facilitate exchange, and it just helps ease the move. Once you get through customs, as fun as that is, there's nothing worse than waiting in a line while you wait for people to pay a toll. You just zoom right through the lane there. So I just wanted to mention that, yes, Canadians can definitely get Easy Pass. I've had it for over 10 years, and I recommend anyone who travels anywhere in the northeastern U.S. or crosses the border should definitely do it, and it's free. It's not like the 407 where they charge $25 every year. It is literally, you have it, and it's free. So I just wanted to mention that, Your Worship.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly why this is on our agenda, so that the public can be made aware of it. According to the correspondence, you can save up to 30% through your use of the Easy Pass. And as you say, it's free. There is an initial cost to obtain the transponder, but then that is applied to your account. So, yes, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. In regards to the correspondence from, who was it? city of Thorold with the state of emergency for addictions. I'm just wondering, and good thing Councillor Encina is here, is if the region would not only declare the state of emergency, but when they're doing their plan for affordable housing and working on homelessness, that they would also consider the fact that this is not just an emergency for the month. This is an emergency for the long haul. And I think what we need, especially here in Fort Erie, is we need a plan as to how we're going to attack the overdoses and how we're going to attack the use of drugs. More so the availability for Narcan packages and so on. Consider even safe consumption sites where people can come into. I don't know that we even have one here in Fort Erie. And people need places to make sure that the drugs that they are using are safe. I know it sounds ambiguous that you want safe drugs, but you shouldn't be using drugs to begin with, but it's not the user that is the problem, it's the drug that's the problem. They're addicted and they need help. There are some good people that are addicted. I know that for a fact. I have some in my family. And it's not them, it's the drug that causes all the problems. And, we can have, reports or correspondence from other municipalities that recognize we have a problem, but I think it's time that Niagara Health in the region and all municipalities in the region work together to try to come up with a plan to at least, if we're not going to get rid of the drug problem, at least minimize the overdoses and minimize the deaths.
Councillor Lubberts, that's quite correct, and making a declaration of a state of emergency is all well and good unless there's actual action that takes place, and that's what really needs to be done, which is what you're addressing. I know that the social services, community health at the region has dealt with this. This has come up before on 2 occasions, Councillor Encina indicates, and this is something that does need to be addressed. You're quite right. There are no safe injection sites in Fort Erie. This is something that would have to be addressed through the region, but certainly your comments are well taken. I know that Councillor Encina and I were both taking notes, so we will take that back to the region. It needs to be a regional initiative, and there needs to be action more than just a declaration of an emergency.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I'm just wondering if the region could even come back to not just Fort Erie, but all the other municipalities and give us some kind of indication of what their plans are and when they're going to start implementing and what funding's available for them. And because, again, we can talk about it, but talking, I think it's a little late for talk. Now we need the plan. We need action.
Regional Councillor Encina has been taking notes. There is a planning committee meeting in July. Perhaps you can raise that and then report back to us at the July Town Council meeting. Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I just wanted to comment on the Municipal Engineering Association letter in regards to our town and how we sit in it. We do have professional engineers. My director is one, and I think it wasn't too long ago we had 2, and we still may have 2, and that the town also covers the cost for them to be a member of the association. And I think that bodes well for us because of there's only 136 smaller municipalities with a population of 50,000 or less that have it, and we were fortunate enough to have 1, if not 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Mr. Walsh, do we still have 2, or did we lose 1 with the departure of Mr. Murata?
We have 1 right now.
That would be you.
Yeah.
So you've got an
Oh, no,
extra...
sorry, my apologies. We have two. Rob Judd is an engineer.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had 3 at one point
Correct.
for a municipality this size, quite correct. Yes, we all remember Rob Judd. He was here last week with about 8 reports. Any other questions or comments? Then I'm going to call the question on the items that are in the consent agenda. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor McDermott, could you read then consent item 9.2.2C for approval?
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that Council approves the consent agenda item 9.22C.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to have the meeting of May 26th not be accepted by council based on several things. First of which was the meeting that we had with Dr. King and with Ms. Ayers, who informed us that that meeting didn't meet the requirements of the bylaws for the SPCA, as they didn't have enough board of directors, first of all, to call the meeting, and secondly, to hold the meeting. The other reasons are that I find the remark with respect to Dr. King and Ms. Ayers defamatory with respect to harassing employees, unless they've done a full investigation and have results of that allegations proven. I think it would be in our best interest to remove that particular meeting minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I note that neither sets of these minutes are signed, which I think is unusual. And second of all, I don't know what the quorum is, but I'd be surprised if the quorum was 3. And there are 6 members, 5 of whom apparently were in attendance, 1 of whom wasn't. Would we ordinarily approve minutes of a meeting with no quorum?
I wouldn't know, Your Worship, whether or not there was quorum, but we're just receiving their minutes. We're not approving them. If they send them in to us, I guess you could decide not accepting them. They're just to be received.
I guess the question is whether they're legitimate minutes. Councillor Lubberts, do you know what the quorum is for the SPCA board?
Yes, according to the bylaws for the SPCA, there needs to be 4 members of the board present
Right. So
to have a quorum.
according to these minutes, there were only 3. So I would think that it would be safe, since these don't appear to be appropriate minutes, for us to at least withhold receiving them, and perhaps the CAO, who has the liaison with the SPCA, can find out what the status of this meeting actually is. You agreeable to doing that, Mr. Queen? Okay. So what we will be approving then is the minutes of the April 28th meeting. Is everybody clear on that? We'll be receiving April 28th minutes.
For the SPCA?
The April 28th meetings of the board of the SPCA.
All right.
So only April 28th, not May the 26th. All clear? All those in favor? Carried. The May 26th minutes, the CAO will report back to us. That takes us then to 9.2.2F.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, the Council approves the consent agenda of item 9.2.2F.
Thank you. The reason I asked for this to be removed from the consent agenda is, although it says receive, and there's been some communication between me and the building department, I'm wondering whether this perhaps shouldn't be referred to the Planning and Development Services Subcommittee meeting for some further discussion. Is anybody prepared to move that? Councillor Dubanow, is there a seconder? Councillor Zanko. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. And then Councillor McDermott, 9.2.3E.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, the Council approves the consent agenda item 9.2-3-E.
That item is on the floor. Any questions or comments? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Havarlich. And I know I never pronounced your last name properly, so I do apologize. I just want to get some clarity. So I know Mr. Bonzini had said that, you know, this is actually the third time now he's requesting the EC overlay be removed. Why is that? I mean, I know I had reached out to the EAC committee, and the chair did say that she does remember the EC overlay being removed for the building of the garage. But why would we then apply that overlay again?
So I would also point out that a member of the Environmental Advisory Committee, Kate Ashbridge, is here also in the event there's further information requested. Mr. Hurlovich.
Excuse me, through the chair to the councillor. I'm afraid I don't have the information as to why it might have been removed and then reinstated and removed and reinstated. Something just doesn't ring true for me, so I would have to do a bit more investigation.
Okay. And I don't know, Your Worship, how I would go about this, but I would definitely like this to be looked in further.
So what I would suggest you do is, we're talking right now about the minutes of March 31st. The other minutes are May the 25th, so if it's the March 31st minutes, you could move to defer those to the July 18th regular council meeting. Yes, July the 18th.
Okay.
If you'd like to do that.
I would like to put that on the floor.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Noyes? Sorry. I was looking to my right. I prefer to look to my left, but occasionally I get stuck looking to my right. Okay, so that's on the floor. There's no debate except with respect to timing, and this would be deferring the March 31st EAC minutes to the July 18th regular council meeting for information from staff. Everybody clear? All those in favor? That is carried. So that leaves us with the...
Mayor Redekop.
Excuse me, that leaves us with the May 25th minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know you said you wanted to get some more information from staff, but I think maybe we need to consult with the Environmental Advisory Committee as well.
I'm quite confident that Mr. Hurlovich will be consulting the members of EAC
Okay, all right,
to get an
yeah.
understanding. And you might wish to as well, Ms. Asbridge is here. She can relate to the members of the committee some of the comments made by Mr. Brosny. Okay, so now we're at the May 25th EAC minutes. Are there any questions or comments on that? All those in, oh, sorry, Councillor Lubberts. Yeah, are you voting early or do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. We had the delegate here earlier, and he's saying that they're cutting through, they're shortcutting off of the trail and damaging his property. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, no, that was a delegation. That was a delegation about the trail.
Oh, the
We're
trail,
now
I'm
talking
sorry,
about the
okay,
May,
all right, yeah.
we're now talking about the May 25th minutes of the Environmental Advisory Committee. When we get to new business, it would be appropriate to raise the 920 Edgemere issue. Okay, any questions or comments then with respect to the May 25th minutes of the EAC committee? If none, then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of receiving those? That is carried. So that takes us to reports, and Councillor Butler, you have the resolution regarding council remuneration comparison survey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. That CAO-12-2022 Council Remuneration Comparison Survey be received for information purposes.
Are there any questions or comments? Is there noise?
At this time, we're just receiving it. We're not voting one way or the other. It's just a report. But I did want to say I am a bit concerned about the timing of this, with it being so close to the election, like when it's going to come back to us. We're not giving staff any recommendation to move forward on it, from what I can see. But again, with inflation, with us just getting over COVID and everything else, and knowing that in a few months there's going to be a new council, I would leave it to the new council, but I would also suggest that we have a committee that that basically gives us some guidance or makes a recommendation to council.
So the difficulty, Councillor Noyes, is that a new council comes in, and if they adjust their salary, then the public complains that that council just gave themselves a raise and they just took office. Why didn't the previous council deal with it? Because some of those councillors will be maybe on the new council. Some of the councillors won't be if they're not seeking re-election. So that's the difficulty, and that's why this was brought forward at this point in time. So to leave it to the next council to adjust their salaries is guaranteed to result in some people who will not be happy. Well, there may be people who won't be happy regardless. Councillor Lubberts.
Finished.
Oh, sorry, you're not done?
Well, I just wanted to respond to your response. I
Sure.
do understand that. I don't think there's any good time to give yourself a raise, basically. But at the same point, I think, taking everything into consideration, that, there's going to be complaints now, there are going to be complaints. There's always going to be some people who are not going to agree with our decision. I think it's the timing of the decision. I also feel, if I'm not mistaken, I think we went through this many years ago, and there was actually a committee, I think, that basically looked at all the detail. It wasn't staff. It was a committee, and that was set up, and they made recommendations. And I think we followed, unless I'm remembering this wrong, because it was quite some time ago, we followed through with the recommendations of the committee that were, residents, and that would be the direction I would prefer to go. And if I'm, just one question, I guess, do we not get like a cost of living every year, like if it goes up 2%, is that not built into it already?
I believe it is. Mr. Jansen, do you know that? There is an adjustment, isn't there, every year?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. The bylaw that approves the rates also approved an increase to be in accordance with the management annual increase.
Yeah, and thank you for that. That's what I recalled happening too. And I think the difference, when we're looking at the dollars and cents, we're looking at about $2,000. So it's not going to make us or break any of us in regards to that if we follow through with the median range or the average range. So anyway, those are just my thoughts on it.
Okay. Councillor Lubberts and then Councillor Butler.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Yeah, just going through this, looking at the other municipalities that are closest to our population, Grimsby and Lincoln being the two of them, and perhaps even Port Colborne, but looking at the difference between Lincoln and Grimsby, councillors in Fort area are at $15,743.40. Lincoln, Grimsby, right around the $22,000 mark. And I can honestly say that sitting on council for 12 years, I can tell you that councillors are not being remunerated as much as I think they should. I've done some research, and I think we're all familiar with George Cuff. He's written several books on governance. In one of his articles, I read that over Canada, the average in Canada, councillor makes about 50% of the mayor's wage or remuneration, and we're nowhere near that. And the problem that we run into when it comes to the raises that we receive, when you're on the other end, like a higher rate, and you're getting percentages, it doesn't take long before you start seeing the gap widening, because At the mayor's rate at 72%, let's just say we get a 3% raise. 3% of 72,000 is a lot more than 3% of 1,500. So you can see where the gap widens fast. So I think, looking at this, what I would like to see is that the councilors' rates go up, and we can leave the mayor's rate the way it is, because if you compare it with the other municipalities, in especially Lincoln and Grimsby, populations are close to the same, and there's a big gap between the two of them, and so I don't know how we would go about this, but myself, knowing that I'm not going to be running for council in the next election, I would have no problem requesting an increase for council. I won't have a conflict of interest. And I don't know that you do have a conflict of interest when it comes to these wages, but it's the perception from the public. And I know Councillor Zanko said she's not going to be running. I don't know about Councillor Butler, but 3 of us aren't going to be running. I would recommend that we don't change anything for the mayor, which puts you at a position where you're not, in my view, you wouldn't be, the perception wouldn't be there for you. So there's 4 members of council that public perception wouldn't affect. So to me, I would hope that someone would come forward with a notice of motion in the future to increase the remuneration for council. And I know that I would support it, and I can tell you, I've been through a lot over the last 12 years, and for the most part, a councillor should receive more than $15,000 a year.
I quite agree with all of your comments. Councillor Butler.
Yes, I happen to agree with Councillor Lubberts' comments as well. I don't believe that there should be a committee in place to make a decision with respect to this, and I'm actually going to bring the motion forward later on this evening through a notice of motion, but I'm not running again either, and I'm steadfast in seeing that the councillors in the next term do get remunerated fairly. Councillor Lubberts made a good point that the comparison with Grimsby and Lincoln shows that Fort Erie councillors are woefully underpaid as a direct comparison to that. I don't think that it's a substantial jump to meet even at 21 or 22. It's not a substantial jump, and it's warranted because I know how many hours I put in, and you know, this is probably my umpteenth time that I'm going to have 3 evening meetings in a row for like the past 12 weeks. So it's not even including what I do during the business day, and you have to give up what you do during the day as a profession in order to accommodate the needs of the general public, and that's what we signed up for. But it does get taxing financially, and I think that it's important for people to be recognized fairly. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Butler, there is, and Councillor Lubberts, there is an alternative referred to at the bottom of page 3 of the report, and that is that staff be directed to make recommendations. So as an example, rather than bringing a notice of motion to be dealt with next month, you could, one of you could move and second that this be referred to the CAO to work in conjunction with the Manager of Employment Services to provide recommendations for the July 11th Council and Committee meeting.
I'll move that.
Says he can
Your
do
worship.
that, so.
Yes.
If we're going to leave it at that, do we need to give them some guidance as to a number? I'm thinking minimum $5,000 increase.
Well, he's heard, the CAO is here, and he's heard the comments that have been made. He'll share those with the manager of employment services, and I'm sure that he'll come back with something, and if it's something that council agrees with, great, and if not, it can be modified. It'll be in the form of a report. So he's been listening.
Yes, okay, yeah. I just wanted to put that out there, that my thoughts are a minimum of $5,000, minimum.
Yep, and he certainly has the ability to
And then if you
speak
could
to-
also include the impact on the tax rate.
Yep, and he can also, I guess Mr. Jansen would have to help to some extent, but he can also, Mr. McQueen can also speak to any members of council if he wishes to while he's reviewing this matter. He won't be bashful, I'm sure. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that this be referred to the CAO for a report in conjunction with the manager of employment services to be put before council at the July 11th council committee meeting.
Do we need a seconder?
Councillor Butler, I believe, moved it. You seconded it. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'm on the other side. I've already filed my nomination paper to seek re-election in Ward 2. So I echo a lot of the concerns that Councillor Noyes raised. I am going to support bringing the report forward because I'm very curious to see what the report says and what the recommendations are. But I want to make it clear right now that does not necessarily mean I will support the report. It's very difficult for me right now when you're seeking re-election to have this discussion. It's, at least in my opinion anyway, something that might be better more midterm kind of. To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure there ever is a good time to have this discussion. I just want to make it clear, I'm going to support bringing this report forward to see what's in there, but we'll see what it says. So thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I don't want to minimize the amount of work that it takes to sit on council and the time dedication that we all give. I agree with Councillor Butler in regards to the amount of time that it takes, but we've chosen to do that. And there are other, honestly, there are other values beside the monetary that we get, whether it's helping our residents or helping our town and doing what we think is right on different topics and things like that. So I've never been in it for the money, and to be perfectly honest, I can look around this horseshoe, and I don't think any of us have ever been in it for the money, because if we were, probably a really bad decision if it was the money that was guiding us, because the money has never been great. And I knew that getting into it in, I think, 1998. I could have made a lot more money putting in 1/10 of the hours into my profession that I did to council. But again, that was never my motivating factor, and it isn't now, and it won't be in the future. So I just wanted to comment that I understand, I'm part of this group, how much work and how much effort and the commitment it takes to be a counselor. I mean, we don't have a time card. It's, basically our residents are our time card. But, I think we all do a lot of work, and we're committed to our town to make it a better place. That's all.
Any other members of council? Councillor McDermott and then Councillor Lubberts.
Well, there's never a good time to ask for a raise when you're a public figure. However, I don't think we would do future councillors down the line a big disservice if we don't look at it every so often. And when you look at the difference between what mayors make and what councillors make, yes, the mayors will work a little harder because they're the front of this council, and well, they should. But I think what happens is, because of the fact that people don't want to ask for that raise, that spread just keeps getting larger. And I think to encourage people that wouldn't ordinarily come into office to sweeten the pot a little bit wouldn't hurt. We're worried about losing a vote or two during election day because we don't want to let councillors in the future down as well, because we would be, I think, letting that gap get wider than it already is. You're right. None of us that sit on this council do it for the money. However, it doesn't hurt to have a little more incentive every so often. And I know I'm not doing it for the money. It's just about being a caring and a counselor that is going to be well worth whatever he or she is being paid from the works that they do with the public. So I've made up my mind yet either. I'd like to see the report, and I'm sure that when it comes forward, it will be one that's well thought out. Thank you.
Councillor, sorry, did you have your hand up? Yeah, Councillor Zanko, before you've already spoken, so Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I agree with my fellow councillors, and I also understand where Councillor Noyes and Dubanow and McDermott will be coming from as well, seeking re-election. But I think the fact of the matter is, if you look at this report, this council is significantly underpaid, significantly. So I will be supporting your motion, Councillor Butler. I would like to see the remuneration be around the same amount as Grimsby and Lincoln. They have populations similar. Actually, they have 3,000 less residents than we have. But I do understand where you're coming from. I just think that, it's not fair the way it is right now. We do put in a significant amount of work, and if anything, we should be close, or if not at the same amount as other municipalities are. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lubberts, back to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just going back to your motivation to run for council. I mean, I don't think anybody's motivation is the money. First of all, at 13 or 15,000 wasn't enough to motivate you. To be honest with you, when I started 10 years ago, I didn't even know what a councillor made. I just ran because I wanted to be on council, because I had things that I thought needed to change. And, so we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. But as you go through the time, my point is the gap gets wider. And the councillors that are, and Mayor, yourself, if you're running, I get that. It's uncomfortable to give yourself a raise. And I've heard the comments over the years with, provincial and federal and different public servants that give themselves a raise. And they do it midterm, and it's all about them. Well, I think this council, you can honestly say 3 of us are the ones that are pushing it, and we're the 3 that aren't going to be here next term. So it's not like council's giving themselves a raise. The 3 that are leaving are giving the 4 that are staying a raise, basically. And if you look at what Councillor Zanko was saying about topping it up to be comparable to Lincoln and Grimsby, that's $5,000 or $6,000 for councillors. Even at $6,000 as 6 councillors, it's $36,000 a year, right, to the taxpayer. And if I'm correct, Mr. Jansen can correct me, but what's our budget? 32 million total?
Yeah, it's just over $30 million for the levy.
So $30,000 out of a $30 million budget, really, I don't know that the taxpayer is going to say, you guys are asking for too much. I really don't think that's going to happen. And if they do, you let them talk to me, because I know what I went through for the last 12 years. And I had lots of people tell me, I don't know how you do it. You couldn't pay me enough to do what you do. So I don't think that the rest of the councillors that are going to be here next year or that are running in the next election have to worry about giving themselves a raise. The 3 that are leaving are giving you a raise. That's my point. So, and if you have any problems with the residents, send them to me. I'll explain to them how much work it is.
So the table does indicate that Fort Erie is the 4th largest municipality by population in Niagara, and the 10th paid councillors are 10th on the list of 12 councillors, which is pretty extraordinary. I can tell you that wherever I go in Niagara, at the region or functions like today, people talk about how much is being done in Fort Erie, how many things are being addressed by council and the staff who are bringing forward these various reports. So it's been, I agree with all your comments. So the question is on the floor, and that is to refer this to the CAO in conjunction with the Manager Employment Services to come back with the report and recommendations for the July 11th Council and Committee meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That takes us then to Councillor Butler, and we're under new business and inquiries now. Sorry, did I miss something? Yeah, that's where I am. Did I? Okay. Okay, I thought you were redirect me.
I was just saying I do.
You're not trying to get me in trouble.
I was going to say I do have an item of new business.
Yes, yes, okay. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that Council accepts the resignation of Shirley Opie from the Communities in Bloom Committee, and further, that Council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments? All those, Councillor Noyes?
I just think Shirley needs to be recognized for all the hard work she has done over the years. She's so steadfast in her belief in the Communities in Bloom, and she has really been a pioneer and such a strong advocate for it. So I just didn't want to. I wish we didn't have to accept it, but I guess we can't force her to continue. But I did want to recognize the years and years and years and wonderful ideas that she has had to really promote this. To be perfectly honest, I think if there wasn't a Shirley Opie, they may not have been a Communities in Bloom. Thank you.
Yeah, she will be recognized by our clerk. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Noyes, you have the next resolution relative to seniors.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Fort Erie directs staff to apply for a grant opportunity for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program for optimized water and wastewater asset management using machine learning, and further, be it therefore resolved that the Corporation of the Town of Fort Erie commits to conducting the following activities in its proposed project submitted to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program to advance our asset management program, take part in the Community of Municipal Innovators and Intel Pipes Dashboard and Data Quality Control and Analysis. Be it further resolved that the Corporation of the Town of Fort Erie commits $50,000 from its budget towards the cost of this initiative.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? And obviously, this has nothing to do with seniors. Okay. I don't know where that came from. Any questions or comments? And the $50,000, that is the town's contribution towards the project, Mr. Walsh? Okay. If there are no questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Councillor McDermott on the water pipe bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow, that the Council of the Town of Fort Erie consents to the passage of the water pipe bylaw of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, being a bylaw to regulate water pipe smoking in the region.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I did second this to get it on the floor, but I'm not going to be supporting this evening. I'm sure the rest of council may be doing that, and that's perfectly fine. I don't agree with the rationale for bringing this forward. Essentially, the way I read it is everyone else is doing it, so we are too. I've never been that kind of individual who makes decisions like that. You know, I always used to hear from my parents, if everyone else jumped off a cliff, would you too? Well, obviously I wouldn't. Sometimes jumping off a cliff may be a good idea, but it's not the reason I do it. I'm also concerned about the cultural aspects, individuals who, this is part of their culture and their heritage, and the impact it would have on them. So I see where this is going. I don't think my lone voice is going to change the direction where this is headed, but I do have a vote, and I'm going to use that vote, so I'm not going to be supporting this this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you. Anyone else? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That then takes us to motions. Sorry, inquiries, new business and inquiries, and Councillor Zanko, you, yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to, just through you, to Mr. Walsh, after seeing Mr. Hatcher's presentation, I'm wondering, and I know you and I have talked about this over and over, I'm sure you're getting tired of me bringing this up, Mr. Walsh, but I'm wondering if after you've seen Mr. Hatcher's presentation, if perhaps there is a way for us to have this guide rail installed, or do I need to bring this under a notice of motion?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, those photos aren't new, and all of my thoughts that I've had with you on this are with those in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so maybe the rest of us can be filled in on what the two of you have been discussing since I have no idea. So what was the nature of the conversation and
So originally, Councillor Zanko had requested, as Mr. Hatcher has requested, that the guide rail be installed on the
side?
On the east side, similar to the west side. The west guide rail exists because there's a catch basin significantly below grade there, protects users from falling into the ditch, essentially. It's staff's opinion, and I think it's been the town's policy, I can't say it's the town's policy, that when a resident backs onto a recreational facility such as a park, the resident is responsible for any fencing that gets installed there. We don't keep people in our parks. People keep people out of their backyards, is essentially how that works. I have discussed with Councillor Zanko providing Mr. Hatcher a series of markers as a start. We can try that this winter, removable reflective markers. My opinion differs from Mr. Hatcher's. He doesn't think it'll work. I think it will work. I think it's a good starting point. I'll give my commitment to council that if it doesn't work, we can proceed to the next step the following winter. So sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I may, it's $200 versus $5,000 right now.
$5,000 to put in
A wooden guide
40
rail
feet
or
of
fence type
40
structure.
or 50 feet of guardrail?
Yeah.
What's the guardrail made of?
Pressure treated
Platinum?
gold.
Platinum? I'm sorry, back to you, Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Worship. The thing is with Mr. Hatcher's situation is it's very unique. If one councillor could find me a property that is similar to Mr. Hatcher's, I will rest my case. It's not that his backyard is on the trail. It's a side yard, and he can't put a fence up because it's going to block him right in. He's tried to put flower gardens, he's tried to put different remedies, but again, last year, there was a lot of damage to his driveway. I can understand why he doesn't want to trust the markers. I wouldn't either, knowing that there's a potential to have that much damage again when I just fixed it. So it's unfortunate. I think, I'm hoping that this council will support my request, but I am requesting that a guide rail is installed.
when is the next infrastructure services meeting? Councillor Noyes, do you know? Mr. Walsh?
I don't have the date, actually.
Mid-July? I would suggest that this matter be put on your agenda so it can be discussed by the committee and Councillor Zanko, that you be notified of when it is so that you can attend, even if it's electronically.
Okay.
Okay. And then you can,
I'm sorry, what was the date of that again?
it's going to be mid-July, you'll be notified. If it's after the committee meeting, the next regular council meeting is July the 18th. You can bring it up then if
Okay.
you don't feel that there's been adequate progress made in addressing Mr. Hatcher's concern.
Sure, I understand. My concern just is timing, because before we know it, we'll be in fall, so, but I will wait until July the 18th meeting.
Mm-hmm. July 20th, so that's even after the council meeting. You don't have a meeting before the committee meeting? You're thinking that there isn't a business subcommittee meeting until after the regular council meeting? Of June? No. You're on planning. You have a planning committee meeting coming up? Then put it on the planning committee agenda. Discuss it there. And Mr. Hurlovich, you can let Mr. Walsh know when that meeting is so that he can either be there or Zoom in, so we can at least have something before next regular council meeting. Okay? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you. Just speaking on that matter, Mr. Walsh, Councillor Zanko said that if the gentleman puts a fence up on his property, then it would block him in. If we put a guardrail up, would that not block him in as well?
Well, the owner can't put up a fence on municipal property. The municipality can, so that means it would be not on his property.
Yeah, could he put a fence on his property?
Well, I guess that's something that can be discussed at the Planning Development Services. He could put a fence up on his own property, yes. I think there's an issue there.
Yeah. Now, could Mr. Walsh, we have room to put a guardrail on the public property?
On the public property?
Yeah.
Yeah.
More than likely, Mr. Mayor. I haven't been out there to walk that part of the trail lately.
Yeah.
There would be. It would be, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so we'll leave that to Planning Development Services, and we'll hear back from you then next month. Any other inquiries or items of new business? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have three inquiries. The first of which is to find out from infrastructure the results of Coyote Road, whether or not we were able to send someone out to take a look at the conditions.
Yes, I received your email last week, spoke with our manager of roads and fleet, George Stojanovic. My apologies if I didn't get back to you. He is looking into it. Yeah.
And then there was a follow-up for Bernard Road off of Dominion for the ditching that hasn't occurred yet. And I was told that that was going to happen last year and then earlier this year, and it was supposed to happen in April, the end of April, and then the end of May, and we're now the end of June. But also, I did see them clearing the ditch, just cutting the debris down, but they didn't actually do any digging because I just checked that the other night. So I wonder if we could follow up on that as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have been out there several times.
Yep.
You may be getting different information from the homeowner. I know George has spoken to the homeowner many, many times.
He spoke to me, George, too, and he told me he was going to, it was slated to get some ditching done.
Yes, get cleaned. we can only ditch as deep as the culvert. I have to go out that way tomorrow. I will stop and take a look myself.
If you could, that would be great, because there are actual boulders that are blocking the passageway as well.
So whereabouts on Bernard is
You know
this?
where Mr. Lazek's house is, right on the
So,
corner?
so near the intersection of Bernard and Dominion, east side. Okay. And you had a third point.
Yes, thank you. This is for planning, and I wondered if Mr. Hurlovich could check into 356 Ridge Road, because there seems to be a conflict with respect to 51% usage for commercial, I believe, and the presentation of materials that have been submitted have not been accepted, even though there's proof that there is 51% being used.
So that's a building department issue. And you've got the address, 356 Ridge.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. This has come up several times, and it's going to be coming up at the infrastructure meeting in July. It's about the ditching. I know I've seen a number of emails going back and forth, and I think Mr. Walsh actually looked into it a little bit in regards to who's responsible for the maintenance of the ditch. And my understanding is that there's no differentiation between a boulevard and the ditch, so that technically the abutting property owner is responsible for the ditch maintenance. But it doesn't quite tell us how to define maintenance. Does maintenance mean that you just have to cut around the little bend where it goes into the ditch, or you have to cut the bulrushes that are growing up out of the ditch? Like, again, there are ditches now in town that if I got in, I wouldn't get out without a ladder. Literally, and I'm not trying to be funny, but literally some of the ditches are so deep. And I've met residents who say, like, if they didn't have a nice young person who lived beside them or next, a few doors down that would come and help them out, they can't do it. And to say, well, you can pay somebody to do it, that doesn't seem quite right either, because it's actually town property that we're asking them to maintain. So I guess my inquiry is that, is there any way that we can, at this point, until we have perhaps a better handle on it or a better way forward on this, that we ask by law not to issue tickets or fines or whatever for ditches that are not maintained? Not officially.
CAO. And it seems to me that all situations aren't the same. It's one thing to have a ditch in heading into Ridgeway where all the neighbors have cut except one, or someplace in Thunder Bay or other parts of the town where the ditches are quite deep. It's interesting how some people will persist, others can't be bothered. But Mr. McQueen, to you, you've heard Councillor Noyes' inquiry about bylaw enforcement not laying any charges on ditches until such time as there's been some further clarification of the responsibilities and the definition of maintenance.
Thank you. Appreciate the question from the councillor. I can certainly follow it back maybe to get a little bit more clarity on what the division is between what's enforced and what's not enforced. I know there is some discretion in terms of the bylaw officers where there may be safety issues with maintaining the ditch to the same extent we might expect somebody to maintain their front yard because of the grade and safety issues. But I think Mr. Walsh maybe wanted to chime in and add a comment to that.
Sure, Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Mayor, we have a response to council inquiry coming back at the next meeting, July 11th.
11th on this particular topic.
Yeah, but it essentially says what Councillor Noyes has stated. I don't think there's anything new there, so I suggest to Mr. McQueen we talk about it at senior managers and go from there.
Okay, thank you. Satisfactory, Councillor Noyes?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Did you have anything further?
Well, I just wanted to comment. I don't think it's that people can't be bothered to do their ditch. I mean, I guess there may be a few of them, but every person that has come to me with a complaint, I've looked at their ditch. and I agree with them.
Yeah, no, some of them simply can't be. I quite agree with that, but I'm familiar with situations where the property owner has, I don't know whether it's a statement they're making, but it's, yeah, I mean, it's obvious that it's not the ditch, it's, in any event.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Any other inquiries? Mr. McQueen, I and the member of provincial parliament received correspondence recently, and he has somewhat followed up with respect to the racetrack and the ongoing issues there that is arising as a result of conduct from Woodbine, which I thought had been addressed about 4 years ago. Turns out perhaps not. And what's happening and what happened 4 years ago was Woodbine was restricting under threat of preventing their horse people from racing at Woodbine if those individuals were to send horses to Fort Erie for races here and then want to return them to Woodbine. That had been the subject of a lot of discussion with the provincial government at the time, and involving Woodbine. It appears that maybe we're back into that same type of situation where the number of races has been reduced, the number of horses in the races has been reduced, consequently the betting has been reduced significantly, and I don't think it's sustainable. I know that MPP Gates has had some conversation with the operators of the track, but I would ask you to do two things. Number one, have your assistant provide you with the background from 2017, 2018 with respect to this issue, and then perhaps make contact with the operators, find out what we, in conjunction with our local MPP, can do in terms of making sure that Woodbine's conduct is not detrimental to our racetrack, which has been in operation for over 100 years, and it would be a shame for it to be put in jeopardy because of racetrack owners in Toronto who receive about 14 times more money from the provincial government than the town of Fort Erie's racetrack does. So if you could follow up on that, I'd appreciate it, and then perhaps report back what you find out, what solutions you come up with, and what it is that we as a council might be able to do to assist our local racetrack. If there are no other items of new business or further inquiries, then that takes us to notices of motion. And I apologize for the brevity of these motions. It's unbecoming a lawyer to have a brief anything. But I will explain what's behind each one. The first one, I need actually a seconder for each of them. Councillor Zanko. Okay. I don't think I have the originals, do I? They're in my black folder. Oh, I just use the ones in here. Can I get you? Sign both of them? Sorry. Thank you. So, no one will be able to read either signature. So the first motion I move, seconded by Councillor Zanko, and I guess I'd have to hand the chair over to, is it Councillor Lubberts right now? Councillor Lubberts, would you take the chair so that I can do these two motions?
Yes, go ahead, Mayor Redekop.
Thank you. So I move, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that Council requests the Province of Ontario to amend the building code to provide municipalities with greater flexibility in controlling orderly and timely construction of new and renovated buildings of all types. So this really emanates from a couple of situations that we've had in Fort Erie where building permits have been issued, construction has languished. There are timelines with respect to commencing construction if you're issued a building permit. But once the construction is started, if there's periodic activity the building department is unable to do anything like pull a building permit. This applies to new construction. There's very little in the way of ability of our building department to manage building permits that are issued for renovations. And those renovations could include expanded footprint, could be a large building. We have, as I said, a couple of situations in Fort Erie where that's going on. And it's difficult for the neighbors. It's difficult for people who have to frequent the area. And so I'm hoping that this resolution would go in accompanied by a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Stephen Clark, just to explain the situation and seek some assistance from the provincial government so that the building department would have some ability to put pressure on individuals who obtain a building permit and are simply not proceeding in an orderly fashion and are creating hardships within their neighborhood. So that's really what's behind that. So I'm hoping that council will support this, and if you have any questions, I'm hoping I have the answers.
Well, are there any questions by any member of council? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you. I do support this. We have a few examples in my ward that, unfortunately, exactly how the mayor has put it, that they kind of follow the letter of the building code, but the letter of the building code is so vague when it comes to, as long as you do something within the year or something like that, you're still in compliance, and it's very hard for some of the buildings that are barely in compliance. But the other side of that is that I'm hoping that if we do get this, that we're going to have to realize that there's a cost involved. I mean, we can, in regards to implementing, if the person who's not behaving well when it comes to finishing his construction site or her construction site, just says, tells us to go pound salt, then we're going to take them to court. And it's going to be expensive, and it's going to be time consuming. So even with new rules doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get the benefit that we're hoping for without a lot of challenges. So what I do hope that the province says, look at it, perhaps makes it a little easier. But I think as a council, we have to realize there's going to be a cost involved if basically the person who's, let's say, causing the problem says, no, take me to court.
Well, I'm thinking that the building permit would simply be revoked, which would mean any activity that goes on would have to be either the subject of a new permit or there would be an order, a work order that would require them not to do anything. You're right, that would involve court.
Any other comments or questions? Being none, I'll call the questions. All those in favor? And opposed? That is carried. Mayor Redekop, you have another motion?
I do, and again, I'll provide some background with respect to this once I'm finished. If I might, I move, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that Council directs staff to prepare a report to Council on policies that can be adopted to better control construction within the municipality, particularly, it's supposed to say particularly, but not exclusively regarding mud tracking, road obstruction, lot grading requirements for renovations resulting in expanded building footprints and increased financial deposits. If I might share,
yes.
So I've had discussions with Mr. Jennings. Some of these are in the works, but some of them create real challenges, so that, as an example, the fees that we have now for mud tracking are quite low. There are occasions where builders obstruct the road so that you can't even get past, or they leave terrible messes on the road. Most of the builders, I will say, in this municipality have been very good, even including large construction like the high school across the street. The builders have been fantastic. There are occasionally situations that arise. Sometimes the weather's at fault, but sometimes it's just a matter of encouragement or better regulation. So those two items. The lot grading requirement, strangely enough, for renovations, there's not necessarily a lot grading requirement or a new lot grading requirement. But if you had and we have at least one situation in town where there's a renovation, but it involves a significant expansion of the footprint of the building, and there's no lot grading requirement. That needs to be addressed, and so that's also referred to in this motion. And then so that's really what's brought this forward. I just want to make sure that the building department and planning department appreciate that this is a priority for council, because it has been periodically a point of aggravation for residents, literally in all parts of the community.
Any comments or questions, Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. As you know, I've brought this up a number of times, and poor Alex has known. I don't know how many emails I have given him about mud on the road and people parking where they shouldn't park, construction vehicles and things like that. So I get numerous complaints. I will say it has improved significantly over the last 2 months. I will say that in the Black Creek area, there's been a huge improvement, so I appreciate that. But again, I'm going to support this, but I do, again, want just to bring to council's attention that with new policy comes new bylaws. And if we're not enforcing the bylaw, you can have as many policies and bylaws as you want. If you don't have the staff to enforce them and to follow up with them, you're going to have a problem. And this is going to fall on 2 departments that are already stretched thin. And so we're going to have to really consider that staffing is going to be required, because we just got the bylaw and the planning department, I think it was last meeting or the meeting before, how busy they are and the increased workload, et cetera, that they're having. And to create more bylaws, we're going to have more staff to enforce them. And I do agree that the fines perhaps aren't necessarily big enough to fit the crime. I think the fines do have to be increased. But an example I'm going to use is that we have bylaws about swales. Like, you're not supposed to block a swale. You're not supposed to do A, B, and C to a swale. And I know our town tries, but I don't know about the rest of council, but I get numerous calls about people who are blocking swales and causing major problems with their neighbors. And it's not that the person who's blocking the swales is doing it, well, they're doing it on purpose, but they don't know what they're doing is causing the problem, I guess is the way. And it comes to education, and it comes to when you buy a house, and I've said this kind of tongue-in-cheek, congratulations, you have a swale. And it should come with some direction of what you can and can't do. You just don't sign the dotted line and things like that. I don't know how we make them aware that you have a swale and you can do this, but you can't do that. And, so there's some education that has to come with this too. Thank you.
And, Mayor Redekop?
Yeah, no, I quite agree. The people that buy in a new subdivision, if they're buying from the builder, they're familiar with the subdivision agreement. Consequent owners may not be familiar with that, and they may not know what their rights are. Certainly, this has been discussed, the idea of educating the public on this, and this is something that the CAO and perhaps our communications coordinator might want to take a look at some point. The issue of responsibility for swales is also something that the town's lawyer has been looking at in terms of the agreements that are available. And in terms of the staffing, I just remind members of council that we have received significant sums of money over the last several years for the issuance of building permits in this community. And so it has been a challenge to get inspectors, to get qualified people to do jobs in planning, but we have the resources, so that if we have the resources and we have policies that need to be enforced, presumably that would be the source of money. And I just think that we have a responsibility to the residents to make sure that as the growth occurs in this community, it isn't unduly and unnecessarily negatively impacting them and their neighborhoods. You can't avoid some disruption. That's going to happen. We all know that. But it would be great if all the builders took the example of the ones that have been very good in terms of addressing these types of issues. So hopefully that's what will occur. Hopefully we won't be in a position where we have to hire new staff, and efforts at educating the public and the builders on these things will be effective. So I'm done.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Very well done. Councillor Noyes?
I just wanted to make sure that the public understood. I'm totally in favor of this, but I'm just wanting to bring it to council's attention that there's going to be a cost involved, because enforcement is the key. You have to enforce it. If we get new requirements and new expectations, that we're going to have to enforce them to have them follow through. And I think, and the problem's going to get, unfortunately, as our lots get smaller and smaller, and the swales are more or less regularly used for drainage issues, that some of these swales take up about half of the backyard. I mean, if you go from the top of the swale to the top of the swale, and if you have a 10-foot or a 15-foot backyard and 6 feet are swale, somehow compromised by the swale, you're going to have an issue. And again, it's education. There are things you can do to a swale and to make it usable for the owner, but again, I am very much in favor of the residents who have had to put up with some poor practices in the past.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? None opposed, that is carried. Mayor Redekop, hand the chair back to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lubberts. Did an excellent job. You had 2 motions to deal with, and they both passed. It's finally paying off. Okay, so Councillor Lubberts, are there any notices of motion? That's next on our agenda. If not, then Councillor Lubberts, I'm going to go to you for first and second reading of the bylaw package. However, bylaws 71, 72, 73, and 76 have to be dealt with separately. 71 and 72 can be dealt with together when we get there, and 73 and 76 can be dealt with together when we get there. But in the meantime, you've got a pared down council bylaw package.
Okay, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw package containing bylaw 69, 2022, to authorize applications for cancellations, reduction, or refund of taxes levied for the years 2020, 2021, and 2022. Bylaw 70-2022, to amend zoning bylaw number 12990 as amended, 3914 Alexandra Road, Centurion Building Corporation, Nicholas Kalanier, owner. Bylaw 74-2022, to authorize the extension of the business banking agreement with TD Commercial Banking for the provisions of banking services. Bylaw 75-2022, to accept and declare lands as public highway on the south side of East Main Street, 3595 East Main Street, 1712131, Ontario, Inc., Beam Home Builders, Lawrence Beam. And bylaw 77-2022, to authorize the entry into a Niagara Gateway Economic Zone and Center Community Improvement Plan, 1700 Pettit Road, Siltec Corporation, is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? That amended bylaw package is on the floor for any questions or comments. If none, then Councillor Noyes, you have the resolution for third and final reading of that amended bylaw package.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Move it myself and second by Councillor Dubanow that bylaws 69, 2022, 70, 2022, 74, 2022, 75, 2022, 77, 2022 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. So back to you, Councillor Lubberts, for bylaws 71 and 72, which Councillor McDermott has a pecuniary interest in. So if you could read those for first and second reading.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw number 71-2022 to authorize the entry into a lease agreement with Fort Erie International Academy for summer aquatic program, and bylaw 72-2022 to amend fees and charges bylaw number 40-09 as amended, summer aquatic program fees for Fort Erie International Academy, is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? That is carried. That bylaw package is on the floor then for any questions or comments. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Just a question about the attendance. I know it's only been a week, and I'm just wondering how it's being received by the community. Are there people attending? Do we know?
Talking about the pool?
Yeah, the pool.
Mulch?
I have no data on that at all right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McQueen, would you have any information on that?
Through the chair, no, I don't.
Okay, well, perhaps we can get some information. Perhaps we can get some information on that to council. We could get it out by email. Okay. School isn't out yet, so I don't know that there's much of an uptake yet, but there will be, although the weather was pretty intense last week. Any other questions or comments? If not, then to you, Councillor Noyes, for third and final reading for those two bylaws.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Move it myself and second by Councillor Dubanow that the bylaw 71-2022 and bylaw 72-2022 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. So Councillor Lubberts, back to you then for bylaws 73 and 76 for 2022, each of which Councillor Butler has a pecuniary interest in.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw number 73-2022 to amend zoning bylaw number 2990 as amended, 3285 Thunder Bay Road, West Wind Niagara Developments, Inc., Alfred Beam, owner, is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? Keep your hand down. That is carried. That bylaw, those bylaws are on the floor for any questions or comments. If none, Councillor Noyes, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Move it myself and second by Councillor Dubanow that bylaw number 73-2022 and bylaw 76-2022 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. That then takes us to Councillor Dubanow for the first and second reading of the confirmatory bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes that bylaw number 78, 2022, to confirm the actions of council at its council and committee meetings held on June 13th, 2022 and June 20th, 2022, and council meeting held on June 27th, 2022 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Zanko, third and final reading, please.
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that bylaw number 78-2022 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to scheduling of meetings. Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, Your Worship, the Community Gaming Development Corporation Board of Directors will be having their June meeting, and also their annual general meeting on Wednesday, June 29th at 5:30. With this being our annual general meeting, it's going to be hosted at South Coast Cookhouse. We've been there before and been very happy with it. Also the following week, on July 6th, we have the Planning and Development Services Subcommittee meeting. That's going to be here at Town Hall at 5 o'clock in Conference Room 1.
What time is the Community Gaming Development Corporation meeting?
Oh, my apologies, that's at 5:30.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. And the Accessibility Committee meeting is tomorrow at 4 o'clock, Committee Room 1. I'm not going to be able to attend, just to let you know. And there's on July 6th at 9 a.m. at May's Restaurant, there's a Fort Erie Non-for-Profit Housing Board meeting.
Any other meetings? If not, then Councillor Dubanow, I'm going to go to you for the final resolution of the evening.
Yes, Your Worship, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. The council adjourns at 8:05 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on July 18th, 2022.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all.